In this first short lecture for Quiz4 material, we'll just talk about the three concepts that you asked about from the judgment and decision-making module: anchoring, framing, and then that third one is the quiz question about arranging the environment. I won't focus explicitly on the quiz question. I'll just talk about the concept and then give you a couple of additional examples of it. To put some of this material in a useful context, I actually want to jump to something that you didn't ask about and is actually at the end of the module, and that is System 1 and System 2. Right, although it's presented to us in the module as a way of fixing our decisions, I actually kind of like to think of it as a good set of organizing principles. And it turns out we're going to come back to System 1 and System 2 various times throughout the rest of the semester. So it's actually worth mentioning first. Okay. So the way to think about it is that we have kind of two basic methods or two basic paths that we use when we have to make decisions. Think of it as a fast system and a slow system. I don't know why they just ended up numbering these. I wish they came up with more meaningful terms, but System 1 is the fast one, System 2 is the slow one. All right, so if you see in the textbook here, System 1 processing, it's our intuitive system, fast, automatic. This is when a judgment or a decision just kind of pops into your head seemingly without any effort. Okay. System 2, on the other hand, is the slow, effortful, more logical form of decision making, the one that you should prefer to use for important decisions because it's much more likely to lead you to a solid decision, the correct answer, so to speak. Okay. And so when you think about the rest of the module, these things like framing that we'll talk about in a bit and anchoring, these are kind of the shortcuts that we use, or at least two of the shortcuts that we use that become part of that System 1 kind of decision making that we use. Okay, and so for each of these, for anchoring and then for framing, you want to think about what is the judgment that we're being asked to do, okay? And then think about what's the System 2 way of making that judgment. In other words, what's the correct answer? What's the right, the effortful, hard way to do it, right? And then what is it that we actually do? What's the shortcut? So with anchoring, the judgment that we are being asked to make is some kind of numerical estimation. Right. So, for example, here, you remember in the textbook, that was this problem 2. We know that executive fraud occurs. We don't know how much, so I want you to estimate it. And in one condition, I'm going to tell you that it's 10 in 1,000, right, etc. Okay. The truth is, I don't like this example. I don't think it's very easy to understand. So I'll try and give you a different one. I'll give you kind of the original research demonstration of anchoring done by Daniel Kahneman. I hope you remember that name. He's our Nobel Prize winner. Daniel Kahneman, and Amos Tversky. And then you'll see from that example, it's not a very real life example. It's pretty artificial. So I'll give you a real life example of anchoring that happened to me about a year ago. Okay, so the original research, what they asked participants to do was to estimate the answer to a math problem. Okay, and there were two versions of it. Okay, so I want you to imagine that you are a participant in this study. Okay, and in one condition, the problem was and they would purposely give this to you for a very short period of time, too short for you to actually be able to calculate it. Okay, and they just want, as quick as you can, give me an estimate of that answer. Okay, this is what half the participants got, and then the other half got the exact same problem, but in reverse. Okay. Now, I almost always forget to calculate the correct answer. So let me do that real quick. 8 times 7. Okay, 40,320. When we ask people to estimate that, they, of course, get it wrong, but they get it wrong in very, very predictable ways. Okay, the real name of anchoring, it's a little bit longer. It's actually anchoring and adjustment. Okay, and that's the shortcut that we use. We will start our estimate with an initial anchoring point. Okay, and then from that anchoring point, we'll adjust until we get to what our final estimate would be. So it works like this. In that top case, you do a couple of the multiplications in your head, right? 2 times 3 is 6, times 4 is 24, times 5 is about 120, and then you run out of time. Okay, your 120 is too small, so but you use that as your anchor point. Okay, and you say, well, from 120, I go up. I've got a 5, 6, 7, 8 I got to do, or 6, 7, 8. I'm going to say it's going to be 2,000. Okay. In the other condition, right, since we read from left to right, you've got a different anchoring point. So quickly in your head, you say, 8 times 7 is 56, times 6, that's about 340, and then I'm done. I can't actually do any more in my head. But I know it's too small, so I have to go up from there. So I'm going from 340. I'm going to say, maybe, seems like it'd be about 8,000. Okay, and so what they found, Kahneman and Tversky, is two things. One, in general, we adjust too little. Okay, so we start with our anchoring point. We adjust too little. So everybody gives a number that's too small, or most everybody. But then the other thing, the order matters, right? So it is the case that people who had this version would give a lower estimate than people who had this version because they started with a different anchor, right? If you start with a lower anchor and you adjust, you'll end up with a lower estimate. Of course, the system 2 way of doing this would be if you had the ability to actually multiply all of these in your head, and you would get 40,240 or whatever I said it was a few minutes ago. We can't do that. We use the shortcut instead, anchoring and adjustment. You say, so what? Right? I don't have to multiply eight numbers in my head ever. It's not really a common type of thing that we do, and it might not be. We might not be called upon to make numerical estimates on a very, very regular basis, but we have to do it sometimes. So let me give you my 1 year ago example of anchoring. I may not have told you my classes this yet, but actually I do CrossFit. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, It's a pretty intense exercise. It incorporates elements of Olympic weightlifting, gymnastics movements, and very intense cardio workouts, usually condensed into pretty short workouts, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes in length. And right now, beginning this Friday, is the biggest participatory event in the CrossFit universe. It's the CrossFit Open. There are going to be about 300,000 athletes around the world, all doing the same 5 workouts over the next 5 weekends. I did it last year, and I again have I think a pretty good example of anchoring and adjustment pertaining to one of the workouts in particular. All right, so it was workout 17.1, 17 for the year 2017, and then the first workout. So here it is for time. 10 dumbbell snatches. That's where you just start with the dumbbell on the floor, and then lift it overhead, and then switch hands and do it the other hand, and then do 15 burpee box jump overs, and then 20 dumbbell snatches, 15 box jump overs, 30, 15, 40, 15, 50, 15. Okay. And there is a 20-minute time cap. Right? You have to finish in 20 minutes or less. So as an athlete getting ready to do this workout, you have to make a numerical estimate. What's my target time? When do I think I'm going to be able to finish this? Because that's going to determine how quickly you're going to try and do each of the movements. Well, the System 2 way would be to come up with some very, very careful analysis of how quickly you can do each of those movements, and then factor in a fatigue adjustment to how much you're going to get slower as time goes on. I can't do that. I mean, I don't know how tired I'm going to. I've never done this workout before, so I can't do a System 2 version of this. I have to do a shortcut. I have to do something like anchoring and adjustment. Okay, let me pick an anchor. Let me pick somebody else who's already done this workout. And when I thought about this, there were 2 people I was considering. One guy who's a little bit better than me, and one guy who I'm a little bit better than. Okay? Whichever one I picked and adjusted from, it's probably going to influence, well, it's only going to influence my target time, and then probably influence my finish time. So the guy who's a little bit slower than me, he actually didn't finish the workout. He hit the time cap. Okay? Second alternative, he actually finished in about 15 minutes. Okay? I picked the guy who didn't finish as my anchor. Right? So my goal was just to finish the workout. And indeed, I finished in about 19 minutes and 45 seconds. What if I had picked the other anchor? What if I had picked the other guy who finished in 15 minutes? I said, well, he's better than I am, but I can stick close to him, so I'd probably be able to finish in about 17 and a half minutes. Okay, and I probably would have. And so in that case, my choice of the wrong anchor actually led me to do probably significantly worse on that workout than I would have otherwise. For framing, this is another one where I'm not super fond of the problem that they give you in the textbook to illustrate it. Right, the 200 people will be saved one. So let me just work with the definition of it, and then turn to a couple of different examples. We're being presented with information. Okay, in this case, we're talking, principally about numerical information. Okay, and then we're going to need to use that information to make some decision. They're going to tell us about a product, for example, and then we have to decide whether or not we're going to buy the product. Okay, so just some kind of judgment with that numerical information. It turns out that the way that numerical information is presented has a big difference on how we interpret it. even if the actual numbers underlying it are the same. Okay, so that's this idea here that, right, to be systematically affected by the way the information is presented while holding the objective information constant. So, for example, go to the grocery store. Okay, you're walking down the meat aisle and you see a package of ground beef and it's labeled 80% lean. Right, you might pick that up and think, yeah, it's pretty good, right? If that same package of ground beef was labeled 20% fat, that wouldn't sound so appetizing, okay? But that's objectively the same information, right? 80% lean is objectively the same thing as 20% fat, but this framing effect does, it just seems different. It looks different. And this is absolutely something that marketers in some cases take advantage of. Okay, so here's 5 DirecTV myths busted. It is a little bit old, from 2015, but the numbers are actually not that much different from the last time I heard about this. Okay, look at number 1, my signal will go out. Wrong. DirecTV's high-powered satellites deliver 99% worry-free signal reliability so that you can access the best entertainment. That sounds pretty good, 99%. Okay. What if, on the other hand, they said, hey, you know what? Your TV is going to be out 7 hours and 20 minutes every month. That doesn't sound so good. That's the same thing. 99% reliability is the same thing as 1% unreliability. 1% of the hours in a month is 7 hours and 20 minutes. Objectively the same information, but one of them sounds pretty good and one of them doesn't sound so good. And again, that's framing. Okay, so let's actually move on to the last idea here, and that is this thing that's become known as nudging. Okay, and this is the idea of changing the environment in often very, very small ways to elicit some kind of change in the decisions people make, change in their behavior. One reason that this became so important is because the author, Richard Thaler, he just won the most recent Nobel Prize in Economics. So this work on changing people's behavior, making them make better decisions, just by giving a little nudge in a particular direction, was influential enough again to net this guy the Nobel Prize. Yeah. I think what I can do is just give you some examples of what we mean by it, right? So the basic principle, we want to make some very small changes in the environment so that people will change their decision, change their behavior. And so think about the ideas that are in the textbook already, kind of the opt-out versus opt-in. What we're really doing is we're changing the default position, okay? People will have a tendency to just stick to what the default is, okay? So if you want people to save for their 401k, okay, their retirement account, make that the default. All right, and so you actually have to choose to get out of it. Okay, imagine that the College of DuPage wanted to institute an optional student activities fee that you had to pay. Okay. They could stick that onto your bill, and they could say, "Hey, if you don't want to, you can actually come to the office and get that money back." Okay, not so many people would do that because you're going to stick to the default. Okay. On the other hand, if you were registering and they said, "Hey, you want to pay an extra $15 for student activities?" most people would probably say no. Okay. Other examples of this nudge effect. One of my favorite ones is this piano stairs idea. Okay. Change the environment a little bit. Make your stairs look like piano keys. Okay? And what they found is that subway commuters take the stairs 66% more often when the stairs are like piano keys. They often will make noise, right? So they'll make music as you're going up and down the stairs. So we're changing people's behavior. We're making them be more active just by changing the way the stairs look and sound. What else we got for a nudge? I was thinking about actually flu shot. You realize that everybody is supposed to get a flu shot, but actually relatively few people do. Okay, so here's a bad way to kind of nudge, right? Where you have to figure out where the decision points are, okay, and then just push people in the right direction. So a bad way would be for me to tell you right now, boy, you really should get a flu shot. I mean, how many of you are going to get up, go to the doctor's office, and get a flu shot right now? None of you. Okay. On the other hand, what if you're already at the doctor's office and the doctor says, hey, you want a flu shot? A lot of people say yes. That is a nudge, right? You're already there anyway, okay? And the doctor can even give you a little bit of information about why flu shots are so important. Many people in that situation will say, yeah. One last example, because I actually haven't figured out the solution yet, but the College of DuPage tries to get students to register early. And so last semester, they put out a bunch of signs in the parking lot trying to encourage people to register. That's going to have no effect whatsoever, right? That's not a nudge. That's at the wrong time. I mean, nobody's going to pull over their car and then start registering. We have to find the point where you're close to that, and it's just a little tiny push in that direction that will allow you, that will encourage you to register earlier. I put the question mark here because I don't know quite what that is, but I do know that what we were doing last semester is likely to be very, very ineffective.